So guys, please subscribe to the channel and please smash the like button on this video. So guys, we've got a crazy story here coming from Yorkshire ways, and a gang chopped off a man's leg, leaving him so terrified that he lied in court to save them. The judge described the attack as gratuitous, violent and bordering on sadistic attack. Max Lambert, Liam Whitaker and Liam Hanbury chopped off the man's leg after they tailgated the car he was a passenger in and pounced on him as he arrived at his mum's house in Yorkshire. It was just 3 weeks after Christmas that Lambert, who's 34, Whitaker's 39 and Hanbury went around the area the man was staying in. A day later, on January the 18th, 2022, his screams alerted neighbours to the horror of what he had been put through. It was said a machete broke in the attack. It was just one of the weapons Lambert, Whitaker and Hanbury took with them. They armed themselves with a machete, axe and sledgehammer. It was said the attack's motive was obscure, but was planned and premeditated. The trio then went to extreme lengths to cover up their tracks, even burning the car they had travelled in, but they did not suspect their victim could recognise them. After his screams alerted neighbours and the police were called, he named Lambert as one of the attackers. But his plight was not over. Despite the fact that they had been charged and were not near the victim, what had happened to him terrified him so much he risked going to prison so he did not have to give evidence. At the sentencing hearing, Leeds Crown Court heard the man who had to have surgery to sew his leg back on after it had been cut off below the knee. He failed to turn up to the trial to give evidence. The court heard that by January the 28th, 2022, when seen by an officer, the man said he was scared of repercussions if he gave his account to police. His Honour Judge Tom Bailey's case, he said he seems to have been subject to intimidation, and on the 6th of May, he gave a statement. In the statement the court heard, the man said he had heard rumours he would be killed if he gave evidence at court. On June the 6th, he gave a statement exonerating the defendants and failed to attend court that July and was arrested. He spent around 2 weeks in custody before giving evidence which exonerated them. The prosecution were ordered to treat him as a hostile witness. Judge Bailey said he is paranoid and anxious and manifested itself in his behaviour. The court heard about the defendant's seemingly normal backgrounds and family life. To anyone who did not know what he had done, Hanbury seemed a perfect family man. He had kids, long-term partner, he was a businessman, and his background alongside Whitaker's and Lambert's making their offending more confusing and more concerning, the judge said. In mitigation for Hanbury, his defence solicitor said his partner speaks highly of his family dynamic, his love for his children and his focus he has in life and always demonstrated towards them young children, and speaks of activities he engages in and well-being issues he attended to. The barrister said his partner describes him having known of his criminal behaviour, how he is someone who has struggled. The court heard at the time of his offending he got up well up on his feet in terms of business. In defence of Lambert, they said the offending was wholly out of character for him. The court heard Lambert had started his own business and it's quite clear he seemed to turn his life around after his last custodial sentence before this offence. And Whitaker represented himself and only spoke to confirm if the court had received his references. It was said he has 29 previous offences, for those including robbery, conspiracy to burgle, violent disorder and assaulting a police officer. Hanbury has 40 previous convictions for 89 offences and his last was in 2021. He has 2 previous convictions for ABH, common assault and battery, possession of an offensive weapon and production of cannabis. Lambert has 43 convictions and his last was a burglary offence. He also has previous GBH. It was said that for the defendants that the violent convictions had taken place when they were younger. In defence for Lambert, said as an adult it's mostly dishonesty or production of cannabis. There is a very small spree of offending when he was 15. These offences include robbery. He said after detention and training order he did not commit another offence of violence. So Lambert from Bradford was found guilty of attempted murder following a trial which concluded last September. Whitaker and Hanbury were both found guilty in a retrial which came to an end in December last year. They were all jailed for 30 years each. They were told they must serve 3/4 of that sentence in custody before going before the parole board, who will determine if they are safe to be released. Once released, they must serve 5 years on licence, and they were all concluded to be dangerous offenders. Hanbury must also serve a consecutive 19-week sentence for possession of cannabis. Judge Bailey said the offence of attempted murder was gratuitous, violent and bordering on sadistic and involved a number of weapons. He added, this was a carefully planned offence in which you had a clear aim to kill the victim. Following the sentence, Detective Inspector Rob Stevens of West Yorkshire Police said these 3 men inflicted dreadful injuries on their victim in what was a brutal assault in which we and the 2 juries believed was a clear attempt to commit murder. Their attack on the victim resulted in him suffering life-changing injuries, and the savagery of their attack has been reflected in the very substantial sentences handed down by the courts. These men were swiftly tracked down and arrested. A comprehensive police investigation following the attack, and I hope the victim can take some comfort from seeing these men jailed for such lengthy periods. Chief Superintendent Jim Griffiths, the District Commander of Kirklees Police, said, the very significant sentences given to these men make plain that those who think it is acceptable to carry weapons and also use them can expect to spend many years behind bars. I can also promise criminals that, as this case demonstrates, West Yorkshire Police will use every resource it has to hunt down and bring to justice those offenders involved in serious violence. And in a news story coming from London ways, a teenager who brutally murdered a 14-year-old schoolboy in a terrifying street attack can be named for the first time as an Old Bailey judge sought to deter young people from knife crime. Marquise Walker, who's 17, pulled a large knife out of his coat and used it to attack Jermaine Cools in a fight near to West Croydon Station in November 2021. Jermaine was the 27th fatal victim of knife crime that year and the youngest victim to die on London streets in 2021. Following an application by the media, Judge Sarah Monroe KC agreed on Wednesday that Walker, facing a life sentence for Jermaine's murder, could be named for the first time. Lifting reporting restrictions which were imposed until his 18th birthday, the judge said she wanted this case to act as a deterrent to others. She said the welfare of this defendant doesn't outweigh the public interest in open justice. Naming will enhance public confidence that the criminal justice system is addressing serious crime and the increasing prevalence of knife crime. There is a consequential need for deterrence, promoting public confidence that the criminal justice system is addressing the problem. Jermaine's parents supported the media's application to be able to name Walker ahead of his sentencing next week. The judge's sentencing remarks from that hearing are also set to be televised. So the fatal stabbing of Jermaine happened in London Road in Croydon following a fight outside a chicken shop. Walker, who was then age 16, was caught on CCTV calmly walking towards the fight and drawing a large knife from his coat. He ran towards Jermaine, who had fallen over and repeatedly lunged at the schoolboy with a knife. Jermaine was driven to hospital while bleeding heavily, but later died from his injuries, including a chest wound and a punctured lung. Walker went on the run after the murder, and he was eventually located nearly 6 weeks later when he was hiding behind a bed. He pleaded guilty to murder and possessing a knife. Walker was also on bail for carrying a zombie knife at the time he murdered Jermaine. His barrister said reports on modern slavery, Walker's psychology and his mental health are all due to be presented to the sentence hearing. In the aftermath of the murder, Jermaine's mother said Jermaine was my life. We were close and together all the time. I miss his laugh and he was always smiling. I miss the joy that he brought to our family, and our home is just sad without him. So guys, there's a few stories coming out from the streets of the UK. It's your boy GC. Keep it locked, keep it real.